Okay, so another day, another roguelite, and today it goes by the name of Rift Keeper. Now, is this one good enough to distract you from, so many good roguelites out there, especially on the Switch? Or should you maybe just quietly ignore this one? Well, hit subscribe, we truly appreciate the support, like the video, leave us a comment below letting us know what your favourite roguelite is on the Switch, and let's get this started. It's a story, and here you play as the Rift Keeper, your role sealing rifts or basically wormholes and protecting the world from demons and the like. Duty calls here, and as you awake from a long sleep you're summoned to a small town where things are, of course, understandably, as always, getting out of hand. It's a very simplistic story and setup, but it does enough to get you into the game's procedurally generated dungeons. Don't expect much else here from the storyline, they do very little to develop it. I would have liked to have seen more personally, but what we get here, it's the bare minimum to get your swords flying. So Rift Keeper first of all earns its roguelite name in difficulty. The problem is, it's not the gameplay itself that's difficult, but the controls, and in particular how responsive they are. Things here first of all just don't flow all that well, just the controller mapping itself. Now we have the usual directions, but it's the button placement. Here B is dodge, A is roll, and Y is attack. Now maybe it's just me, but B is almost always jump right next to attack, and then that A button should be dodge instead. Maybe that's a weird complaint, maybe you need to pull your controller out and take a look for yourself, but it just felt unnatural to me to be jumping between the Y and A button for the jump and attack moves, probably the two you're going to be using the most especially. It took some getting used to, that's for sure, and I can't say I liked it. If they were going to do something that was a little bit out of the box, they should have really given us controller mapping options so we could make the changes as we pleased. Now on top of this, there was some sort of lag also when it came to these inputs. Not so much the attacks, they felt fine, but it was in particular the jump mechanic. First of all, let's say I was running towards a ledge, I was getting ready to jump to the next one, get my attack on with an enemy, but the Rift Keeper just kind of ungracefully kept on running, and he ran straight off the edge and maybe jumped halfway down. It was like there was a split second delay, and it just made for a very difficult gameplay style when I'm trying to jump all over this world. On the back of this then, that's the same thing for the double jump mechanic. It's just horribly implemented overall. I'd be jumping and I'd either hammer the button quickly so I wouldn't get a max height, I'd be jumping on the way up almost, or I'd get the second jump on the way down. Controls for a roguelite are key, and here I've got to say we have some serious problems. I needed precision and I just couldn't find a way here to achieve that. Okay, so outside of that, controls, it all just feels very basic. Combat is a single input, and strategy amounted to nothing more than, to be honest, taking advantage of the poor moveset our enemies have been given here. They essentially walk backwards and forwards on a platform, they don't follow you, they don't jump down or jump up to you, and they attack pretty much in a single way every time. Let's say our archer enemies, for example, they fire at you, but all you need to do here is, well, duck, because they can't duck and fire. The challenge wasn't the health bar, but simply learn the basic pattern of each enemy and take advantage of it. Another really weird element of combat I noticed, there's no option to jump and attack at the same time. It made climbing a ledge a chore, to be honest. I'd have to wait for the enemy to turn his back, start walking away so I could jump up and get into attack position. This though, I will say, it sums up nearly every enemy encounter for me. Wait for them to turn their backs, they weren't intelligent enough to notice my approach, so I'd pretty much get my first couple attacks in free. To be fair though, this actually summed up a lot of my enemy encounters. Outside of exploiting their moveset, I'd also just wait for them to turn their backs, jump up, and attack from behind for some easy wins. On top of this, when it comes to the combat, you also do get different weapons, but unfortunately none felt particularly unique. To sum it up, it's basically some range and speed differences, the occasional shield element built in, which I did like, but that's about it. Combat in a game like this should be absolute priority, and unfortunately, it's all extremely clunky. It's no Dead Cells, put it that way. Yes, I will say I know it's considerably more expensive. This is $10, that's around 25, but this one clearly holds Dead Cells as an idol and an influence, so it needs to at least try and live up to it and get close. Now last up for gameplay, when it comes to difficulty, this is of course true to the roguelike genre. Progress through areas, but once you die expect to head all the way back to the beginning. But unfortunately here you don't get to keep upgrades, you'll never really feel more powerful after it happens. You don't even get any more story or anything else, it's just you die and restart. It got very frustrating when I didn't feel like I was seeing the growth I normally would. For difficulty as well, at the beginning of each dungeon, the game will display the difficulty, meaning what sort of attack multiplier our enemies are getting. What they really needed though was some sort of intelligence buffer, some sort of intelligence multiplier, because they might be stronger, but all these same exploits still worked, and I still kept on dying because the controls were breaking on me. Overall here it is a roguelite, and the setup plays to it, explore dungeons, fight enemies, maintain that life bar. It all sounds great on paper as usual because roguelites, they are addictive as hell. But here with Riftkeeper, the game mechanics, especially in its controls, as I said, let me down entirely. They were my true enemy in this game, and everything I did here just felt like an absolute chore. Okay, so graphically speaking, I will say I do like what they did here with the vibe, very medieval-esque fantasy, and all with just the right amount of pixelation to be compared to the big boys of the genre. The initial world, the village, it's nicely designed, it's unique, and it pretty much sets up what you can expect for the entire game. Unfortunately though, the dungeons, they do get repetitive very quickly, dark, drab environments, and yes, I know, that was the intention. It's a dungeon, of course. But there's just nothing here that's placed to, keep your attention, to keep things changing, even if it's just very slightly. I was getting bored just a few dungeons in, because I knew exactly what they looked like before I went in, and to be honest, I could rarely tell the difference between the last one to this one. Now when it comes to enemies too, expect repetition here. Model-wise, we have very few, and they just repeat the same ones over and over again. Even as you progress between different dungeons, you just keep on saying the same damn enemies. Sadly, like levels, we just need more variety. It made a good initial impression, this one, but it just couldn't hold it up for even a couple of dungeons in, never mind the entire game. Okay, so last up, audio, and I will say I liked it. I really did like it. Weapons, they sound good. Attacks sound, suitably heavy. Music is very much metal, almost a genre trait at this point. But it all stood out from the rest of the package, I'll say that much. There's not a huge amount in here, but what we get does work, and I'm appreciative of that. Normally here, I'd say we don't really get enough sound effects, and it gets repetitive. But that's not the audio's fault here, it's just matching the game's visual design. So I'm not going to take any marks off for that. Okay, so the final verdict and the roguelite for me is not only addictive because of the combat and control scheme, but lives and dies by it. You're supposed to feel like you're growing as a player and character, but with Riftkeeper, you never get that satisfaction. That's not only because though of the broken controls, but the leveling up, it does very little other than to make the game frustrating, quite honestly. The level design never changes, so you don't feel like you're really progressing. And that same thing goes for the enemies as well. They stay the same, so I never felt like I was, getting more powerful, becoming a bit more accomplished as a warrior. It just made for an overall frustrating experience, not a fun one. Today, we are awarding Riftkeeper on the Switch a bad 3 out of 10. I just can't bump this to a slightly below average 4, I would be cheating you with that. Even for die-hard genre fans, I don't think there's enough here. Yes, it is cheap, so if you run out of options, maybe pick this one up, if you feel like being tortured, especially with a control scheme. But for everyone else, there's so many other good options to consider. First of all, even if you're going to have to pay that little bit extra, you'll thank yourself later. Thanks so much for watching, hit like, hit subscribe, and we're going to see you all on the next Gaming X.